Welcome back to another conversation that I hope will bring you insight and inspiration. And my guest today, we're pretty much twinning today for more than one reason, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I love, the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. And my name is Sarah Jenkins. I have a background in local news. I was an evening anchor for an NBC affiliate in central Nebraska, and it's actually the station that you're currently at. So we definitely have that in common in addition to our names. Prior to that, I worked in local news, also reporting in Laughlin, Nevada. That was my first market I worked in, and I co-hosted a morning show. Sorry about that. Um, I co-hosted a morning show in Nevada, and then went on to Nebraska. And after leaving the station there, I'm actually now back in Nevada, but I'm in Las Vegas, and I cover entertainment news.
Wow, so it's like a full circle. You started off with the lifestyle type of vibe, and then you went to hard news, and now you're back. So, what was that transition like coming from, morning talk show to hard news evening? Like, what was that transition?
Yeah, it was interesting, when you look back on any career trajectory. I feel like each station I worked at, I honed my skill set and I became stronger as a journalist overall. I think having had the opportunity to have different positions really enabled me to kind of diversify my skill set, which is really important because I think if you work in local news, or any type of broadcast news or shows, you have to be able to really understand like everything behind the scenes. A lot of times I think people just have the perception, especially with anchoring, that you just sit there and read, and it's like there's so many other skills that you have to really do. So I loved it, and it's cool that I've now worked morning and evenings. So, as you know, there's like benefits to both and drawbacks to both, but
Yeah, because when I started out at my first station, I was a morning news anchor, and it was an overnight shift. So I came into work at midnight, and I would clock off at like 8:30. So was it similar like that for you with your first morning show?
Mine, I would have to get up at like 3:30 ish, and then and that was because I would try to work out, which was crazy, and then I'd have to be there around like at 5, and then I think my shift was until 2, so it was a little atypical. I think a lot of morning shifts start even earlier. It's interesting how different stations do it, but it was definitely a whole different, completely different schedule. When I went to Local 4 and worked in the evenings, and your body just kind of has to adjust.
Yeah, I personally like it because I'm a little bit of a night owl, so I like not having to go to work until the afternoon, basically. So, but yeah, so like you mentioned in the beginning, both names Sarah, both either previously or currently work at Local 4 News, and you were here at Local 4 News for 2 years, correct?
Yes. Yep. I started actually 2 weeks after I got married. We obviously knew, I accepted the job offer and we had planned our wedding in advance. So yeah, we got married, and then I flew to Nebraska and started in fall of 2017. So it flew by. It was such a great experience.
So what are the skills that you think that you had from, your previous gig that you were able to transfer to your evening newscast?
Um, Mainly, it's so hard. I had a lot of experience reporting, and so my new role when I moved to Local 4 was anchor producing. Still did a little reporting, but I'm going to turn down my phone. I apologize. Um, just being able to kind of hone my pre-existing skills, and I grew interviewing, feeling comfortable on camera, researching subjects of my interviews, and I feel like just grew overall as a journalist and really understanding, you know, um, and delving into the complexities of any topic that we're interviewing someone. So I really grew a lot.
Would you say like 2 years is a good solid amount of time to expand your skills?
Yeah, definitely. 2 years, I felt like I really got like I don't want to call it a crash course because it was my second market, but I really did hone those skills and felt like, I really got a comprehensive just experience, so it was really great.
Yeah. And so So fast forward 2 years after that, and you are now back in Nevada. And what has that transition been like, and what are you doing today?
Yeah, so when I moved to Las Vegas, I knew that I wanted to cover primarily entertainment news. And so initially, I had interviewed at a couple local affiliate stations. I was offered a producer role. Obviously, I had that producing experience. And so I considered it. And then I made the decision for myself that ultimately I really wanted to focus on entertainment news because that's why I moved here to this city and it's a passion of mine. So I decided to kind of start my own channel and brand that's called Blond About Town. And we like to really showcase red carpet events, all of the musicians and artists that come through Las Vegas. We've also kind of expanded. I've been doing a lot of interviews with local restaurants and bars because Las Vegas is such an incredible nightlife scene. And it's been really exciting. COVID kind of threw me for a loop. I think like with every industry, everyone's just trying to figure out kind of how to navigate this new normal, but it's been fun.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of your episodes from Blonde About Town, and they're always so fun and creative, and I can tell you're very passionate about it. What how did you start it? Like, was this something, Blonde About Town, was it something that you kind of had for a while and then it really launched once you moved back to Nevada? Or did you move to Nevada and say, okay, I'm starting my own, you know, passion, my own project, and this is how I'm doing it? How was that starting process?
I think the seed of the idea of Blonde About Town, or kind of, I guess the concept of it had been in my mind for some time. I wasn't sure exactly when I came here, I was thinking if the opportunity presented itself, I might still stay in local news. But I knew that I wanted to showcase and focus more on featurey, less hard news, more entertainment. So I guess initially I didn't really know exactly what that was going to look like, but over time it kind of evolved. And as I started doing research and creating my moniker for Blonde About Town and setting up my LLC and reaching out to people that I knew when I lived in Las Vegas before, like a videographer friend of mine, and kind of refreshing my skill set with editing on Adobe Premiere. A lot of these pieces kind of came together. And then I ended up just kind of fully throwing myself into it. And yeah, it's been a ride, but it's been really fun.
Yeah, it looks like you're having so much fun. How did you come up with the name Blonde About Town?
I put a lot of thought into it. I thought gal about town at first, and I was like, it sounds kind of weird. I don't know. So I'm blonde. I've always been blonde, and I purposefully did about town because even though primarily I want to focus on showcasing Las Vegas entertainment, I am certainly open to, LA is 4 hours from here, and there's a lot of entertainment opportunities that I would love to showcase there as well. Right when I was really throwing myself into starting to market Blonde About Town, it's crazy because pre-COVID, it feels years ago, but back in February, I went to New York Fashion Week and covered it in a couple shows. That was really fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So, if there's anyone watching this that might want to start their own, passion project or their own business, do you feel like location is very important? So, like, if you're living, for example, in Nebraska, where there's not that much access to, entertainment and red carpet events, do you feel like that would be like a major setback, or do you feel like, there are ways to work with what you have?
There's always ways to work with what you have. Absolutely. I would tell people never get discouraged. And, you know, there's certain limitations like where you are geographically, whether it's because of a job that you're currently doing or you're trying to build up for something or maybe save up to move somewhere. I think that nowadays with technology, that's the beauty of it. You can do so much remotely, as we've all been learning lately, especially. I do think ultimately, for me, entertainment, there was 3 cities that I thought ultimately I really would have to move to if I wanted to, do what I'm doing. So it was New York, LA, or Las Vegas, at least in America. So that was why I opted to move here. But I also think that it's so important to have that background in local news, because if I didn't have that, like I've had many discussions with people about, I had years ago thought, all right, I'm just going to move to LA, prior to working in local news and try to make it. And that's literally what so many thousands of people do. And having that local news background, not only is a skill set, but it legitimizes you. And I think it makes you a lot more hireable and professional. Um, I know, for red carpet hosting, it's interesting. I've kind of been familiarizing myself with other people who would want to do that. And I follow people on Instagram. And a lot of hosts in LA are also full-time actors as well. So it's kind of interesting. I definitely think local news, if you can get the experience, like do it, because that will set you apart.
Yeah. And how have the local news skills transferred with the way that you operate Blonde About Town?
It's been invaluable, like my experience in having worked in local news, because so many of the way that shows and editing and interviews and everything is structured, it's all very formulaic. Like if you watch e-news, I notice, they'll still utilize the same technologies and the same concepts that you would in a regular newscast. Like they'll do a feature story or they'll do like a 30-second VOSOT. So I feel like once you have that foundation of like the news structure and like different A, B, C blocks,
Yeah.
that's the same in e-news or wherever. So there's a lot of similarities, and it's just invaluable having that background knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a good point that you made, because with news, everything is just what is happening today. What can you bring us today? And you condense pretty much a day's work of content into 30 seconds, a minute. But I can imagine with, more entertainment and lifestyle type of news, that you have more time to really give it your all and be more creative. And how has that extra time, boosted your creativity, if it has?
I think it's great to have the opportunity to be able to really showcase your creativity. And that certainly is an upside of, not having this tight deadline. But you still have deadlines. You definitely, it's nice because it's not like, you have an hour to finish producing a show. And but all of the interviews, that the people that I'm interviewing, the subjects, I still have to set up stuff, and a lot of times they have expectations. If they've taken the time out of their day to sit down with me, they'll ask me, well, when can I expect to see this interview, or when will it be posted? So I definitely feel a responsibility, and I think that's just being professional to people that have taken time out of their day. Plus, I'm usually really excited. When you've interviewed someone, you want to get it out there. So yeah, but it is nice. I mean, local news is crazy as far as you're on. It's so boom, 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 but it's fun. It's exciting.
Okay, so you do have a little bit more time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking like, a week to get something out. You're still trying to be as quick as possible. Just it's not like that day, that evening, if you don't need it to be.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely have a little more time.
Okay, that's so good to know. And then I guess another question would be, so you mentioned earlier that you have Blonde About Town is an LLC. Uh, do you think that it's really important to establish your own brand, have your own logo, your own name, and what do you think would be, kind of what I'm trying to say is, if you feel like you're a multifaceted person and you're interested in a lot of different things, how do you, condense it into one thing?
It's tough. I think I read somewhere like the average person now will have like 12 career changes, throughout the duration of their career, which is crazy. And I think most of us are multifaceted. That's what makes us so interesting and human. And we have, different interests that are going to evolve over time. For me, I've always had a passion specifically for entertainment. I love, watching artists and music and creativity. And um, putting together the brand was really important to me. And again, it was another thing that kind of like evolved over time. It started out with this concept for Blonde About Town. I had to come up with the name itself, then the moniker. I used a company called Taylor Brands, which I would recommend to anyone. It's really cool and user friendly, and you just go to their website and you can create, a brand, and they'll even, you can print out business cards and pillows and everything. It's really cool. So that's just a way to kind of like legitimize it.
Taylor, can you repeat that again? Taylor Brands is what you said?
Yes, Taylor, Tailer brands.com. And so from there, I only recently actually registered Blond About Town as an LLC, but I'm working with a publicist. And so once you start to grow, I think you just kind of, from a legal standpoint, you want to make sure, you know, that you protect your assets. And I also have an agent, and you just kind of want to legitimize it as a brand itself. So I think initially it wasn't that important, but I wanted it to really be its own entity. So that's why I registered it.
That's so important. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that website as well. So, do you have any advice for anyone that is looking to start their own passions and their own project, their own company, and maybe they don't have all the tools yet? Because you just said that you have an agent, a publicist. So, like hearing that, that's very inspiring. But that could also be like, oh, I'm not there yet. I don't. Maybe I don't even have the money for that. What tips would you have for someone that are trying to, take those baby steps towards, having their own LLC and their own brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to start somewhere, and so many resources are available online nowadays and are free. And my agent, if he pitches me somewhere and I get hired, he gets a percentage. But the good news is I didn't have to pay him anything off the bat. So, and that's a whole other topic. You know, a lot of people feel that you don't necessarily need an agent, and I think that's just a personal choice. But yeah, like the publicist, I would say that's certainly not something you need initially when you're really first starting out. It's really the most important things really are free, which is just having the courage to reach out to people and ask them questions. And you never be afraid to ask questions or ask for help. The worst thing is someone can say no or ignore you. And if you already work in this business and local news, I think you already have to have a thick skin. And most of the time, people will be really flattered if you ask them, you're approaching them in such a way that you're like, okay, you're an expert on this. Can you help me? And I think people like to talk about themselves and things they're proud of. So,
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing so much. But actually, that also reminded me. So, did you also, was that part of your technique too when you started Blonde About Town? Like, did you just go to red carpet events if there's a new restaurant opening and just, contacted the owner and said, hey, I have my business. I would like to talk to you. Was it just that simple?
um, yes and no, because I definitely have experienced rejection or just silence before, so it's a matter of really putting yourself out there. Honestly, one thing that was kind of eye-opening to me was having come from a local news background. You have that built-in legitimacy. You are receiving press releases in your newsroom all day, every day. So when you're kind of independent, your own entity, I really have leaned on the fact that I have this background in local news, and I feel like that legitimizes me. But there still are people, if I'm reaching out to a red carpet press person and saying, hey, I'd like to cover this, they might be like, well, you're independent, so it's harder to get your foot in the door sometimes. But that's really where just persistence comes in.
Yeah. And once you do, get the ball rolling and talk to a couple like really awesome people or, covered a couple of awesome events, do you use that to say, hey, this is, I'm Sarah from Blonde About Town. This is what I've done so far, and I would love to talk to you next. Does that help you?
Yeah, 100%. That's such a good point, because I am huge on leverage. I think that everything is about experience and really truly how you market it and leverage it. And the more experiences you have, the more it will legitimize you over time. So if you're really just starting out, I would say be persistent. But once you get a couple experiences, really don't. I think sometimes as women, we have a hard time promoting ourselves. And I think that's so important. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of times men have no problem. It's just kind of more of a societal thing where, they'll tout their accomplishments. And I think women need to do that too. Never be afraid, because it's not bragging, you're selling yourself. So, and if you're excited about yourself, other people will be excited about, you too. And that's so important.
That's some solid advice right there. You heard that, ladies? Is there anything else that I might have missed that you would like to touch on in terms of, your Blonde About Town, or just advice that you want to share?
I would just say, if you have an idea that's really, or a passion that you've been thinking about or feeling compelled to pursue for a long time, a lot of us, I think, sometimes have situations in our life that you feel can inhibit, really exploring those passions. You might be in a job that's not your favorite, or you might feel like you're geographically somewhere that you might not be able to do some opportunities, but just don't give up. And really, as I said, like, don't be afraid to ask others for advice and reach out. And I think the world needs more creatives and passionate people. So if you have this idea that's just in you, then I would definitely say pursue it.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Before we end this conversation, would you like to tell us where we can find you, your website, social media handles?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, I'm Blond About Town, BLOND, no E, About Town. And on YouTube, my channel where you can see all my interviews and showcasing local events, that's Blond About Town as well. Facebook, same. So I'm pretty easy to find. I also have a website, blondabouttown.com. And I have all my videos and interviews and the episodes I've shot, and I also have some cool blogs. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. You know, anything you want to learn about that brand, I encourage you to check it out. And I'm always here if anyone wants to reach out to me.
Yes, you are so nice and so gracious. I think about, when I first came to Nebraska and accepted this position, I didn't know what to expect. And I remember reaching out to you, and you just gave me kind of the rundown of what I can expect. And you were so helpful in that. So yes, if you if you have any questions and you'd like to talk to Sarah, she's so sweet. But yeah, thank you so much. And hopefully we can meet again one day. If I come out to Nevada, I'll let you know.
I know, absolutely. I would love that. You're always welcome. Please come out soon. And thanks for asking me. I'm honored, and it's been a fun opportunity to sit down with you.